Hello everyone! In our second video, we outlined the 6-step approach to identify and close gender-related gaps developed by Assist Partner by Her to help assist teams integrate gender into improvement activities. This video provides guidance on the first step of that approach and that process, how to conduct a gender analysis. For improvement activities to be effective, it is critical to understand the political, cultural, and social norms, beliefs, and the environment in which programs are designed and implemented. Gender is one aspect of this local context that must be considered to create culturally sensitive and relevant activities, and different strategies and measures may be necessary to achieve intended results and equitable outcomes for males and females. A gender analysis is a useful technique to help foster this understanding. A gender analysis is a systematic way of identifying, understanding, and describing the social, economic, education, health, and political factors that affect the lives of women, men, girls, and boys, and how these gender inequalities and power relations affect project goals and outcomes. By examining the experiences of women, men, girls, and boys in different aspects of life, a gender analysis helps us to identify how local beliefs, cultural norms, and the context in which programs operate impact them differently within existing social, economic, and political structures. It will also help us to examine differences in how they are able to decide, influence, control, enforce, and engage in individual and collective actions. And it also helps us understand and assess how our own policies, programs, and projects may impact them differently. In sum, a gender analysis helps us to identify gender-related inequalities, constraints, and opportunities that may affect project outcomes and how they should and can be addressed or leveraged within the project design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. So how do you conduct a gender analysis? Ideally, a gender analysis will be conducted before an improvement project begins in order to better understand gender issues that may affect the program. But it is still useful if gender analysis is conducted during any stage of program implementation. There is no specific methodology required for conducting a gender analysis, but it always involves collecting and analyzing sex disaggregated data and other qualitative and quantitative information on gender issues. There are many tools and frameworks that can provide a foundation for the analysis and be adapted based on the project needs. But at its core, a gender analysis should help understand and answer the two questions. How will the different roles and status of females and males affect the work? And the second question, how will the anticipated results of the work affect females and males differently? It is helpful to develop a list of illustrative questions to include in the gender analysis related to the expected effects of program interventions and the anticipated outcomes on gender relations, norms, and equality. The questions will vary depending on the aim of the project, the local context, and whether it is implemented in the facility, the community, or both. Please see the Gender Integration Guide for examples of research questions that can be developed and used. To answer these questions, first review existing gender analyses, gender assessments, and other research on gender in the country or community where the work will take place. Look for sex disaggregated and quantitative and qualitative background information and gender considerations that have already been identified. While quantitative data can show what is happening, qualitative data gives meaning to gender roles and norms and helps explain why people act in certain ways. Some examples of documents that can contain relevant data include census or surveillance data disaggregated by sex, project or organizational document such as baseline studies or the monitoring and evaluation plans, statistics and reports from government departments and ministries, and government policy documents, or a third-party gender studies such as gender analysis assessments or research papers. You will likely need additional data to better understand gender issues and gaps affecting males and females in specific communities. Consider conducting focus group discussion, key informant interviews, participatory research, qualitative surveys, and even informal conversations with local community members. Observing facilities, schools, households, or other venues relevant to improvement projects may provide insight into gender relations. This additional data allows you to gain new insights and perspectives from gathering new data from a range of individuals. It may also help you make a strong case for the recommendations that you will make and the interventions that you will implement. A gender analysis is organized around aspects of social and cultural relations to help understand gender relations more concretely. USCID recommends analyzing 5 different areas, or we call them domains. The first one is access to and control over assets and resources. It refers to being able to use the assets necessary to be a fully active and productive participant socially, economically, and politically in society. The second domain is cultural norms and beliefs, which refer to the beliefs that shape gender identity and behavior, and the perceptions that guide how males and females interpret aspects of their lives. The third domain is patterns of power and decision making, which look at the ability to freely decide, influence, control, and enforce material, human, intellectual, and financial resources in the family, in the community, and at the country level. The fourth domain are laws, policies, regulations, and institutional practices which reflect how gender affects the way people are treated and regarded by customary law, the formal legal code, and the judiciary system. And the fifth and final domain are roles, responsibilities, and time used, which looks at people's behaviors and actions in life, what they actually do, and how this varies by gender. For example, a gender analysis in a health project could consider how being a woman or being a man, being a girl or being a boy affects a person's health status, determinants and outcomes, knowledge of health and health services, how it affects access to, use of, and retention in health services, how it affects decisions about their own health and that of their children and families, how it affects the use of individual and family economic resources and income to pay for transportation, for services, and for medications, and how it affects participation in health management. The 2 key questions that I mentioned earlier should be applied to each of the domains that just mentioned and considered at the country and project level. Keep these key areas in mind when reviewing the desk review and speaking with stakeholders. Remember that gender relations change over time and across societies and locations. For example, it is different to be a woman in Cambodia now than it was in 1960. Within Uganda, it is different to be a woman in Kampala, which is in the central part of Uganda, than to be a woman in the West Nile region. Thus, it is also important to examine the 5 domains that we just mentioned of gender analysis across and within different social relations, such as within partnerships, households and families, communities and civil society, and government institutions, as well as different ethnicities, races, classes, and ages. Further, it is important to include different people in a gender analysis and to consult with local community members and leaders, service providers, both women and men. Diverse stakeholders who participate in the gender analysis provide insightful information about the localized differences between males and females in the family, social, and political spheres. Once all sources of information have been analyzed using the key questions that we mentioned earlier and the 5 domains, review all data and information collected holistically. This means you need to review all data in the context of the gender roles and relationships of women, men, girls, and boys. You need to also synthesize the gender issues identified, their interconnectedness, and how they could affect the activities and goals planned through the project. And thirdly, you need to identify how the project might respond to the issues identified through the gender analysis in order to be effective and to promote gender equality. Finally, based on the gender analysis, results and identified constraints and opportunities, develop a list of actionable recommendations to reduce gender gaps within the project. Then, develop a short write-up to describe your gender analysis process and findings. It should be short and concise, easy to read, and highlight key issues. When developing recommendations, consider the following. Consider existing or new gender-related activities. Consider what resources and actions are required, such as related to staffing, funding, and training. Consider supportive strategies and resources by donors and other stakeholders. Think about results and associated indicators that should be incorporated, and consider anticipated areas of resistance or unintended consequences. Remember the principle that we discussed in previous videos of do no harm. Findings from the gender analysis should be incorporated throughout the project design, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation, as well as documentation. A rapid gender analysis can be done in a few days, and a more thorough gender analysis can take weeks. We have developed gender analysis worksheets to help improvement teams collect, organize, and analyze information for a gender analysis, which can be found at the link now appearing on the screen. These can be adapted based on the project needs, but should always focus on answering the 2 key questions that we mentioned at the beginning of this video. If a formal analysis is not possible, it is still important to informally ask questions and gather information to better understand the gender issues affecting the project and to take those issues into account. Remember that when integrated into project design, the results of a gender analysis help determine the changes to be tested for improvement, contribute to an improved understanding of gender-related drivers in development outcomes, and facilitate better implementation of projects to achieve improved quality of care. Without considering gender, improvement risks failing to reach half of the population and unintentionally exploiting or harming women, men, boys, or girls. For more information on how to conduct a gender analysis, please use our website www.usaidAssist.org/topics/gender. Thank you so much for your attention and see you in the next video.